Welcome back to Coffee Spills and Pineapples. In this episode, we talked to Rachel Ohanian Najarian from the US, with whom I'll be making a latte. Hope not to spill it. You as a creator, when you start thinking and you put, brand stories together and strategies for different companies or different nonprofits, how do you think? How do you start thinking? Where do you dig? Where do you go get your inspiration?
It's interesting because there is an energy that comes from within when I start to see a shape. I'm a visual, so I see emotions and feelings and things in shapes.
I hear music and see colors as well.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
So a shape starts to take place. And people and places are associated with it, and I just sort of allow the energy to come. But once I see that gem, you won't stop me. It'll just be, and no one else sees it. When I was consulting, sort of had my own consulting practice for about 10 years, and then I brought
This
it
was
back
in San Francisco?
No, this is really, well, I would say because we moved around a lot with kids.
Yeah.
I started to freelance, and in 2001, 2002, freelancing was really not what it is now. And it was great because I wound up moving through digital doing that. If I had stopped completely and tried to go back, it would have been from, because I was in a print world. When I had this consulting practice, I didn't make business cards, and I really officially was Rachel Najarian Consulting, but what I thought I would do if I had a business card is the shape I saw, the visual I had, was that there's a gem, a diamond, and it's in a swamp, and it's just covered in vines. No one sees this gem but me. There's just a little, and my goal would be to cut the vines and to show the gem. It is very interesting that when I will say to people, when I'm visioning on how I'm going to create anything, it could be I'm going to create a campaign.
Right.
It could be I'm simply going to introduce people. And I, at one dinner party not that long ago, called it constellations. I said, each one of you is a star in the universe, and you're part of more than one constellation, but tonight this is the constellation.
I love how you put it in a story frame.
That
right?
was my toast. And I said, and I feel blessed. I feel like I've been put on this earth to connect people. And I have some wild stories of connections that just sort of blow my mind. That
Are you
I
going
will
to tell us
hold
any?
my favorite one is with my psychotherapist, who is a Jungian therapist in New York, was on the board, an international board of the Jungian Institute, which is based in Switzerland, where Jung lived and died. So he says Armenia has applied for a Jungian chapter, and I said, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that Armenia has a Jungian chapter. This is so beyond progressive. This country amazes me. So he gave me the name of the woman, and I'll leave her name out just for the sake of it. And I Facebook find her, and I send her a message, and I said, I am so fascinated. I'd love to meet with you. I'm going to be in Armenia, and because it was COVID time, she wanted to do it over Zoom. So we meet over Zoom, and I said, this is so fascinating. About 10, 11 of them are going to have applied. We hope we get approved. At that time, 8 years, is the most unbelievable human and therapist, if you can bring him, and he trains the trainers. So if you can in any way have him in your universe, it will change you forever. So maybe about 8 months later, in a session with my therapist, he says, guess where I'm going? And
to
February,
Armenia.
and he came here, I guess it's about a year and a half ago, he came, or 2 years ago maybe. He came here, and he is meeting with them again. They're going, I believe a group of them are going to Switzerland to meet.
That's a great connection.
For me, this is the way in which I progress. I build progress. No one needs to know about it. I guess I'm telling you right now, and others will hear about it. But
well, at the time, no one needs to know about it.
No, there's no
because it happens,
there's no reason
and there's a good time to tell the story, and this is a good story. So, is it a pineapple? Is it like something that you feel like, this is something that I will
guess I'm gonna have to I got to pineapples before coffee spills.
That's fine. Yeah.
There's plenty of those too.
So bringing people together, networking, and creating a story around that event is not just a social gathering, it's also purposeful. So it's purpose driven, and I think that this is the kind of communications that I also do when building events for companies or nonprofits or diplomatic institutions where they want to have a cultural dialogue, where they want to have a meaningful collaboration. So that's the whole point behind these dinners, these networks, these events.
It moves. It doesn't move a mountain, but it makes a movement. It moves things.
Sometimes it moves it so big that policies are changed, and I've been involved in those kinds of. Yeah.
We oftentimes, I think all of us will say we don't know really what goes on behind closed doors.
Right.
Most of what's accomplished. And this points right back to the media thing. You can watch the news, but assume you know very, very little. Take whatever you want from it. And I wish people didn't react so much to the news because it's...
I think it's a human thing, right? That's why we tell stories too, is to move people emotional. Media is the same way, and unfortunately some manipulations happen, some propaganda happens. So as a smart, intelligent human, you need to cross-check. A lot of the times I receive a video of something, and then I cross-check it, and it was from 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah, it was real, but it's not happening now,
right now,
and it's not relevant. Right. But what about your new endeavors? I know that you're jumping into a new field, and you and I are of the same generation, of the same age, and jumping into something new at this age for a lot of people is scary. It's something not just
yes and no.
But it's a challenge that I always welcome. I mean, I decided to start a podcast. This year. So what inspired you to change or embark in this new film production?
Yes. So it's not really that new in many ways, in the sense that it's an evolution, and I would say probably you would say the same about your podcast, that it's sort of a natural evolution of where your mind is at, where your post-midlife or midlife crisis mind is at. You move to being an observer of life as you watch your kids get older. Your confidence or your need to prove yourself starts to just become less important. Not that we necessarily tried to prove ourselves, but this idea that we have to, it's always on the table. Performing, reaching goals, impressing a client, whatever it is that you're doing.
Right.
If I think from that all the way till now, what am I doing? I'm listening, bringing people together with talents and skills. I'm raising funds. I'm writing, make the posters, make the flyers. There's the business side of it, collect the money, etc. There's ops. There's everything in it.
But it's hard to explain all this in 1 or 2 words, right? Same. I do. Okay.
So I have to say to that I gave up explaining what I do. A friend of mine asked me, as I'm kind of struggling with sort of how do I present myself on LinkedIn, and he said, just give me the 3 words that describe you. And I just instantly went, okay, I don't know. He said, first things that come to mind. Said, okay, connector. Great. What's next? Curator. Great. What's next? Producer. I'm always producing. I'm always making something. Maybe I'm just naturally a creator. As a woman, you sort of always feel that you're creating. But so I wound up changing this on my LinkedIn and saying, you know what? I don't actually know how to describe it any other way. Connector, curator, promoter, producer. It doesn't even matter if I get hired or not. It's not even about that. This is my world. So it is challenging to describe that. Let's say 10, 15 or so years ago, and a producer, and we're having lunch. Once in a while we did. I haven't seen her in quite a while, and she said, Rachel, you think like a producer. You do know that, right? And I said, no, I didn't really think of that. She said, have you ever thought of getting into film? And I said, no. Put it away. And then I get a call when Nara Mukherjee, her movie A Call from Home, had been shortlisted to the 10. And now we have the Academy voting to get it to the 5, and I'm
Right.
asked if I will help get a vote going in New York and do a screening and et cetera. And here I am doing my thing. Find the locations, find the people to work with, get an invite out, and make it happen. And then Nada and I formed a friendship, and she said, several years later, I want you to work on my next film. And I was, that's interesting. So I started to learn a little bit more about, building the pitch, the legal work, the budgeting, et cetera. So then, when this amazing person, Eric Nazarian, calls me in October, he contacted me and said, I want you to work with me on my next project. Now, it's different. Now I'm hearing something different. I'm at a point in my life where I have all of these gifts and talents skills, and I know what I can do. I don't necessarily know who else knows, and this person sees what I have. And I really said, this is naturally where I'm at. This is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm very excited what I've learned, how much I've learned from him. I've had a new appreciation for international film, which I'm going to say I feel almost embarrassed to say I have a little bit of a myopic American view on film. Again, a somewhat embarrassed, but at the same time as we watch Hollywood struggle to reinvent itself, or at least we hope it does. You just see the power of cinema in the rest of the world is very inspiring. So I'm excited to learn from it, and I'm applying all the things that I've done before. So in that way, it is new. It's not new, but here you are, 55.
Well, congratulations. I mean, that sounds like the beginning of a pineapple right there.
You like my
right?
pineapple?
Come on. This
now
is
I gotta
quite...
get to coffee spills.
Yeah, we're going to get into coffee spills. Tell us about, how you co-founded a dance group when you were younger.
Founding member, I would say. I was young. Armenian dance changed my life, absolutely, because it became the conduit through which I became attached to my Armenian identity. I had been very active in the Armenian church and the youth group and Sunday school and Saturday Armenian school, and could read and write. My speaking was fair when I was younger, but I was 12, almost 13 maybe, when AGBU had a dance group, Darren Dance Group, in Watertown, and they performed at my church, and I turned to my mom and said, I have to be with them. That's all I said. I was 13. She said, absolutely. That was it. My father drove me twice a week. And then in 1985, we traveled all over.
Yeah.
We performed. I think some of the most amazing pieces of Sight Nova were not just what happened on stage, but what happened off stage.
That's what I was going to say. The people that I met there and lived with, those experiences actually built my character.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think there are so many people who will never have that kind of bonding and camaraderie on bus rides.
That's right.
In hotel rooms. Some of the hotel rooms just were horrible because we couldn't afford good ones. And then we'd keep each other up all night because we wouldn't want to sleep on the sheets. Going from room to room. And fascinatingly, at even 15, 16, my parents would have no issues wherever I went with this dance group.
Because
even
they were
HBU.
with your Armenian...
Didn't matter. I mean, at 15, my first performance, big performance, was at Tufts. My first trip was to Florida. And my parents had no issues with my going, my first airplane.
Yeah.
People's Express, I think we took. And no longer. And I did a class in my MBA program at Boston University. I did the MBA program with a certification in nonprofit management. It's really this program I really wanted to do. But in my entrepreneurship class at the time, it was 95, 96, so it's pre-web. So entrepreneurship was still largely about like your family-owned businesses or getting things. It wasn't so much about this VC entrepreneurial angel world we live in. We had to do a paper, and we had to pick 3 entrepreneurs, and we had to talk with them and then write about them. I actually wrote, one of the 3 was Apo Ashton, who founded Sight Nova. You learn a lot from these kind of mentors and these kind of people until eventually you don't, which is what happened.
That's right.
After 16 years, 17 years of dancing.
But that's also part of the process.
Absolutely. And I think people go through that process.
So your background says that you've lived in many different places in the U.S., but I also know that you travel a lot. So you meet people, you learn new things, but by living, you go even deeper.
Yes.
So Chicago, Boston,
No,
LA.
Boston's where I was born.
Yeah, okay.
And raised, and I met my husband there. And at 30, we married at 26 when I was 26, and at 30 we moved to Michigan for 2 years, which is where he is from, outside Detroit. And then with our first son, Hike, then when Hike was about 2 years old, not quite, we moved to San Francisco for 4 years and had Ohanian Najarian. And then after that we moved to New York City for 2 years, and then to Boston for 1, and then back to New York for 7, and then DC, Washington DC, is where we've been for 8 years. So
8 years in D.C.
8 years in DC.
A lot's happening in D.C. during those 8 years.
Yeah, lots happened. We had COVID shortly after moving. We had a war in Armenia. We had multiple wars that we watched around the world. Interesting time to be in DC.
Yeah. Also,
And-
I mean, the change of administration. Also, yeah.
I'll tell you that New York was wonderful, and we had an incredible community. To not answer, but address your point about getting in deep.
Yeah.
I will say that every single time we moved, particularly when the kids were a little older, we really absorbed the people and the mannerisms or the culture
Right.
of wherever we were.
You
living.
became New
We
Yorkers.
became them.
Yeah.
We became New Yorkers. We became San Francisco. I learned how to stop talking about where I went to school because nobody cares about your acronyms
Right.
of where you
Right,
went to
right.
school. You know, the New England or Northeast snobbery that I had. I learned how to do that and appreciate, creatives in a different way. Everywhere we lived, we pretended or acted as if we were going to be there forever, even if we weren't.
8 years in D.C. What did you learn?
I mean, I have to tell you that DC is not what I think a lot of people think it is. It is probably the most significant network I've ever seen in my life, and as someone who is very networked and who builds networks and
Right.
takes pride in my networks and my relationships with others, I've never seen a network like DC, and I don't think it exists anywhere else in the world. But I have to say, leaving New York in 2017, in January 2017 is when we started the move, and Trump was just about taking office, and we have New York license plates, so everyone thinks we're coming with the administration. And then moving to DC, I have to say the most refreshing thing is no one had an issue with anything. No one asked me about my politics. No one still has to this day, etc. I certainly wouldn't say that we're seeing the same thing we've seen in the past. I think that the second
Yeah, this
Trump
is a very
administration
different
is
one.
very different, and I also think Biden was very different. So I think that this has been pushed to the extremes. But I would say when we first moved, it was very refreshing to have people on your street working at the State Department or
Right.
possibly the agencies and
Change makers, basically. They are the
They've been
ones.
doing this
Policy
for-
making is
Yeah,
really important.
It's a job, and
Yep.
quite frankly, my neighbor said it to me best. He said right after we moved, he said, "I've been in the State Department for 27 years. I've seen 4 presidents. Why
Right.
would this one
Be different.
be different?" And that has really shaped my sort of understanding of, if you let go of the attachment to this, it has to be this way or another
Political
way.
alliances.
Political alliances.
Yeah.
And you realize that this is just sort of the way democracy theoretically
Right.
or
Should be
ideally
working.
works, should be working, then you let it be. And you don't get overly emotionally attached too much to any of it because it will change.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
politics, it will change, but some administration will change policy or law to the point where the way you do things or the way things have been done will change. And to the good or bad.
Right.
We will find out, but I mean, when you see liberties and freedoms being revoked,
Right.
you start wondering, like, what kind of change are we looking for? So, it's really interesting to actually see this through the lens of people that are capturing this on social media from where I stand, to actually live it every day from where you are, because you wake up in the morning, something has changed, and that something could or could not affect your daily life. But for me, it'll just be through the through the social media perspective.
It's an interesting point, because I will say that a lot of it depends on where you get your information from.
True.
And I don't think I'm saying anything ingenious here by pointing out that we're living in a time of content war.
Sure.
Information war. And I don't even know if it's a war of words, and I'm not so sure it's a war of facts. I mean, we don't hear about the lies and the fact-finding as much anymore. It's just now been accepted that no one really knows. Yeah, people lie.
People lie.
Now we have AI. Now you have people saying, wait a minute, was it AI that generated that, or did it really happen? So at least I think I grew up in a time where information was power. I was an economics major, and information is the basis upon which a market is created. If you don't have near perfect information, you can't actually make decisions on wants and needs. So information to me is basic, and here we are with people outside DC, let's say, just like people outside Armenia, can only get their information from the sources in front of them. So I did also, my husband and I both made a conscious choice about 6 years ago when we watched Social Dilemma to get rid of our social media on our phones. We didn't cancel our accounts, we got rid of it. The war happened in Armenia. I said, shortly after, I said, oh my gosh, I'm not connected. I'm not going to know what's going on. Best decision I ever made. So we practice the same thing with U.S. news. I will let you know we do not watch the news, Armenian or U.S. news. Maybe we will turn on something, maybe a BBC or this once in a while. And my motto is, I'm going to wait for everything to come out, and then the real story will reveal itself eventually.
Right.
Right now, there is no reaction.
Because sensationalism, and you and I are both in communications, and we know what storytelling through media and social media and all those beautiful platforms that are supposed to be liberating us can do to a society, can do to the mind, and to the emotions.
And emotions. I mean, people are, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but people are losing their shit.
This is not TV. You can say what you want.
People are losing their shit.
They are.
I will also point out that my kids, it's a very interesting time to have young adults. I have a 25, 22 next week, and almost 20-year-olds.
25, 22, yeah.
We're the same, right? 2 boys and a girl. And so this generation, my kids have fascinated me, and I have continue to learn so much from them. But it was actually my older son, when I'm sitting on the couch feeling this existential crisis over what's happening in Armenia, and many, I think, Syrians and others and people who are watching what's happening in the Middle East, it's just sort of, what do we do? What do we do if there isn't a homeland? And I said, it's interesting growing up in Boston in the 70s and the 80s, when my grandparents came from overseas, I never felt threatened, and I didn't have, quote unquote, a homeland. We never even thought about Soviet Armenia. And here I am, 2021 it was about, around 22, and sitting here and just saying, I don't know what to do. And my son came downstairs and said, I'm letting you know right now, I will not, and I refuse to allow myself to go down with this. If people want to be idiots, if people can't manage themselves,
their emotions,
this is not going to take me down with it. And that distance, this slightly on bordering on apathy, is something I characterize with my kids' generation. That their agency is coming from their apathy instead of it being two different things. And I think if I had to say, to bring it back to just a DC in this environment, for me, it's a beautiful thing to open up my home or our world of being Armenian to non-Armenians. So everywhere we go, people know we're Armenian. It's one of the first things that they're going to learn. I mean, my kids were named with Armenian names. opposite reason that my parents and grandparents didn't give us Armenian names, we'd assimilate. I want them to walk around, if nothing else, with their pagan history in their name. So everyone knows that about us, and I love sharing that with people.
I mentioned storytellers earlier for us. I want us to move a little bit away from things Armenian and talk about, so I'm really intrigued to see that, you've embraced the Armenian side of your father's side of the family. I assume your mom also embraced it, and she encouraged that. But she's not of Armenian heritage.
Nope. No,
Tell us a little bit about that.
My mom was really the driving force behind my Armenianism.
It's a new word.
She's no longer, Armenianism. She is no longer with us. My parents have both passed, so I can't prove this, but I can remember all of the conversations that we had, and I remember what happened. And I know that my mother was from a Russian and Romanian background, and both sides were very Orthodox Christian.
I see.
And the church was very important to her.
Very strong.
Rhode Island,
church.
yeah. That migration was in the 1898 through to 1906 as well. Interesting time period to be coming to America.
Right.
Lots happening in the rest of the world. And the Ottoman Empire actually was, even though my mother's not Armenian, was what my grandfather, born in Greece, he was born in Veria, Greece, was in Turkish schools. He spoke Turkish. He wore a fez.
Wow. So was my grandmother, yeah.
Right. When they came to America, the Romanian side and the Russian side, which is probably technically Ukraine because it's Galicia, what did they do? They built churches. So the first Russian Orthodox Church of Rhode Island is my family's, and the first Romanian Orthodox Church of Rhode Island is my family's. So when my mother marries my dad, who's an atheist, the only way, important thing to her was that we go to an imp church. And my great-grandparents had formed that parish in Boston in 1923. They were there. For my mother, she had grown up with this strong identity of culture that came from that thing, that place. So Saturday school, 4 years old every Saturday, Sunday school every Sunday. I was reading and writing Armenian by the time I was 7. I was the poster child, in my opinion, for being Armenian as an American, and it was my mother that did most of that. My father did not attend church, even though his grandparents had founded it. He was playing tennis. He would drop us off and go to the tennis court. So this is how it was, and so to the point where, one day, 16, 17 almost, and I'm dating this guy, at high school, boyfriend, and he's not Armenian. And my mom says, "I'll help you make your bed," which she very rarely did. And she said, "So you're dating this boy?" I said, "Yeah, I like him. He's nice."
He's the Armenian.
She says, "He's not Armenian." I said, "Mom, you're not Armenian." She said, "I'm not, but you are. And it's important to you." That's how my mother was.
Wow.
So very, very interesting. And my mother taught Sunday school for 38 years at Holy Trinity
At the Armenian Church.
She used to comment that Armenians don't know their history as well as I do, which was fair.
Well, 30 years,
history.
I mean, you learned.
38
yeah,
she
38,
taught.
Yeah.
She was president of the Armenian Women's Welfare Association.
President
of the board. She was a active member for years, which owned and operated, still does, the Armenian Nursing Home in Jamaica Plain. So many people didn't know she wasn't Armenian. I did marry an Armenian, full Armenian. So my kids are more than me. I always say this is fascinating, but this is also an interesting time for me because I've never paid so much attention to my being half. Didn't go over so well sometimes when I was younger in the community, which is not to their credit. But I do say now, as I try to embrace, I do feel different in many ways, being a second generation American. It's half Armenian, and so connected here. I will say in 92, when I came to Armenia for the first time, so I say to every young woman, that if she has not broken away from whatever box she's in, she's got to break away. So I'm an economics and sociology major, and I'm interviewing on Wall Street, and, probably, cum laude graduate. Goldman Sachs was waiting, and Merrill Lynch was waiting, or Bear Stearns, and I couldn't do it. All I knew was I had to get to Armenia. So I jumped on an archaeological dig in '92 when there was no electricity, water, much going on in this country, and I left. And my parents were almost like beside themselves. They couldn't stop me. But I got lost in this country at a time when there was no way for me to be connected to anyone here. There was no English. My Armenian, by week 3, I was thinking in Armenian, in Eastern. And I found myself. But for me, interestingly, it was the first time I felt like I was with Armenians like me because of my Russian mother. Mm-hmm. I was not Beirutsi and Baskahide, and I wasn't Halepsi, and none of that history was mine. And I don't have a genocide we're all part of the genocide.
Right.
The Hamidian massacres in 1895, but and they did lose, and that's why they started to build life elsewhere. But I didn't have that same, my husband's the grandchild of 4 orphans, incredible genocide stories. And so here I was coming here and instantly felt that I had met people, which was not true for many, many people.
No, it's not. Yeah, it's. This Armenia for me was very new. Armenia.
Yes.
I come from the Anatolian part of where Armenia used to be, and communities and the Milayets and so on. But this is a different kind of Armenia, and I grew to love it. I grew to live in it for 23 years. Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today. This episode was so inspiring to me, and there was a mirror. I felt like there's a lot of things that you reminded me of myself, of my youth, and the journey that I had taken to come to Armenia and to be a communicator, and putting my family first. So much thanks and gratitude.
Thank you.
So follow us on Spotify or YouTube. Share, subscribe, tell us what you think. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.